I want you to picture something before we even really get started today. A massive, multi-ton space capsule is hitting the Earth's atmosphere.
Right.
And it is falling from orbit at roughly 40,000 miles per hour. That is about 64,000 kilometers per hour.
Which is just an unfathomable speed.
Exactly. The immense, blistering kinetic energy of that reentry is allegedly survived, and the craft is slowed down safely, using just one standard parachute.
Yeah, and while you were picturing that physics problem, consider the second scenario. An astronaut is out in lunar orbit. Mission control on Earth gives him a verbal command over the radio, right?
Okay.
And he executes that command instantaneously. Zero delay.
Wait, none.
None. Even though the fundamental laws of physics dictate that a radio signal traveling at the speed of light requires at least 2.5 seconds to make that round trip across the void of space.
Which raises one massive, unavoidable question for the people analyzing this footage.
Mm-hmm.
What exactly did NASA show the world on April 1st, 2026?
Right. Was it a triumph of aerospace engineering
Or was it something entirely different? Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we are taking a stack of really fascinating sources you sent us regarding the Artemis 2 mission, and we are looking at them through a very specific, very skeptical lens.
Yeah, so to set the table for you, let's just quickly establish the official baseline of what was supposed to have happened.
Good idea.
On April 1st, 2026, the Artemis 2 mission officially launched. The vehicle was the Orion spacecraft, propelled by the massive Space Launch System.
And the crew was 4 astronauts, right? Reed Wiseman, Victor Glover, Christina Koch, and Jeremy Hansen.
Exactly. And officially, this was celebrated globally as the first manned flight beyond low Earth orbit since Apollo 17, way back in 1972.
But, and this is crucial, our deep dive today is absolutely not about the official orbital mechanics of that flight. We're unpacking the sprawling, incredibly intricate conspiracy theories that exploded across the internet the second that rocket supposedly left the launch pad.
We definitely need to be crystal clear about our methodology and our sources here. The materials you shared with us are transcripts from alternative analysis YouTube channels.
Channels like Vadim Shigalov and Sirius 888, right?
Yes, along with translated, highly detailed script breakdowns from various anonymous internet forums. We are maintaining a strictly impartial stance here.
Total neutrality.
Right. Our job is to analyze and report on the specific claims, the internal logic, and the theories presented in these sources. We are not taking a side, nor are we endorsing any of these theories as factual truth.
Okay, let's unpack this, because if we want to understand why these analysts believe the entire Artemis 2 mission is a fabricated illusion, we really have to start where they start.
With the raw broadcast footage.
Exactly. The sources point to what they call glaring visual and physical anomalies.
Yeah, they argue that the official narrative breaks down before the astronauts even leave the ground. They focus heavily on what NASA refers to as the WOT procedure.
The walkout, right?
Yes, the walkout. This is that highly publicized moment when the 4 crew members walk out to face the press and all those flashing cameras at the Kennedy Space Center before heading to the launch pad.
Right. And they are wearing those brand new, extremely bright orange spacesuits. It's a very striking image.
It is, but the sources point out an anomaly that they claim completely exposes the whole event. When you watch the high-definition footage of that walkout, the alternative analysts suggest zooming in on the crowd of journalists.
Oh, I saw this in the notes.
Yeah, specifically, they want you to look at the digital screens of the mobile phones and the video cameras being held up by the reporters in the crowd.
I looked at the screenshots from the source material for this, and it is a really bizarre visual. The screens on those devices do not show the astronauts walking past.
They don't. According to the breakdown of the footage, if you look closely at those digital displays, they show completely different interior environments. And more importantly,
no orange.
Exactly. There is absolutely no bright orange visible on any of those miniature screens.
Let me make sure I'm following the logic of the claim here. Are the sources suggesting this is essentially a poorly executed green screen composite? Like watching a movie where a character looks into a mirror, but the mirror reflects an empty room instead of the actor.
That is the exact mechanism they are proposing. They argue that the journalists were filmed in one location, the astronauts were filmed in a completely separate controlled room, and what NASA broadcast to the public was a sloppy digital mashup.
Where the foreground action completely failed to match the environmental reflections in the background.
Right, but they don't stop at the launch pad. They take this idea of physical impossibility and apply it to the return of the capsule.
Which brings us back to that parachute issue you mentioned at the start.
The physics here are really the core of their argument. The Orion capsule is a massive, heavy object re-entering the atmosphere at 64,000 kilometers per hour.
And the sources argue that trying to arrest that much mass and kinetic energy with just one standard parachute is just an engineering impossibility.
Yeah, they claim it would simply shred the canvas or tear the parachute straight off the mountings.
And their scrutiny of the ocean recovery goes way beyond just the parachute. They highlighted a specific moment during the live feed of the water rescue.
Oh, this part is wild.
Right. The astronauts are supposedly sitting in a yellow life raft bobbing in the ocean, and a rescue helicopter is hovering right above them.
And a rescue diver is lowered down on a winch to secure the crew for extraction. The diver wraps the winch harness around the first astronaut.
And according to the video analysis and the sources, in the very next frame of this continuous live feed, that exact same astronaut has suddenly teleported 7 to 8 meters straight up into the air, just hovering above the raft.
Wait, I need to clarify something. Are they saying the network simply cut to a different camera angle?
No, that's the whole crux of the issue. The sources argue you cannot have an instantaneous mid-air teleportation in a true, unedited live broadcast.
Right, if this were a post-mission highlight reel, a jump cut would be perfectly normal.
Exactly. But NASA presented this specific feed as an uninterrupted real-time look at the recovery. The analysts argue it looks less like a live camera feed and more like a poorly rendered video game, where a character model glitches through the environment.
Which perfectly transitions to what the sources consider the ultimate smoking gun of the entire broadcast. An anomaly that doesn't just challenge video editing, but challenges the fundamental constants of the universe.
The speed of light.
Yes.
This was the detail in the documents that really made me pause.
Yeah.
We're talking about the vast distance between the Earth and the Moon. That's roughly 238,000 miles.
Right. And because radio waves travel at the speed of light, it takes a signal about 1.25 seconds to travel from mission control to the lunar orbit.
And another 1.25 seconds for the response to travel back.
Exactly. So by the strict laws of physics, there must be an absolute minimum delay of 2.5 to 2.6 seconds for any two-way communication.
But the sources isolate a specific moment in the interior cabin footage. One of the astronauts is floating there, making a heart shape with his hands for the camera. Someone from Earth Control says, over the radio, put a finger up.
And the astronaut does it instantly.
Zero delay. There's zero delay between the end of the Earth Controller's sentence and the astronaut's physical reaction.
From an analytical standpoint, the sources argue you have just witnessed a complete failure of the simulation. If the astronaut were truly in lunar orbit, he physically could not have heard that command yet.
Right, the sound waves hadn't even reached his headset.
Exactly. And the sources point out an incredible piece of body language in that exact moment.
Oh, the facepalm.
Yes. Victor Glover, the black astronaut sitting directly across from the one who held up his finger, allegedly realizes the mistake in real time. According to the video breakdown, Glover actually does a physical facepalm right there on camera, as if realizing they just broke character.
That implies a heavy, heavy level of coordination. How does mission control react to this alleged mistake?
Well, the sources claim Earth Control realizes the glitch, quickly talks over the awkward silence, and repeats the question.
And this time, seemingly aware of the physics requirement, the astronaut waits the required 2.5 seconds of dead air before holding up two fingers.
It's wild. But if we follow the
So if we follow the analysts' logic here, NASA doesn't have the technology to actually go, but they have a global mandate to launch Artemis 2. Are the sources suggesting they literally just built a movie set?
That is precisely what they are suggesting, and they believe they have the exact blueprint NASA used. The sources draw a direct, non-stop parallel to a movie from 1977 called Capricorn 1.
I am vaguely familiar with the title, but what is the actual plot and why is it so central to this theory?
So in Capricorn 1, the plot revolves around NASA attempting a manned mission to Mars or Venus, depending on which script version you look at. Right before the launch, the agency realizes there are catastrophic technical failures that will kill the crew. So to save face and secure their funding, they pull the astronauts out of the capsule in secret, fly them to an isolated hangar in the desert, and force them to act out the entire space mission on a meticulously designed soundstage.
You're kidding. So the sources are claiming that Artemis 2 is essentially a nonfiction remake of a 1977 thriller.
Yes, and the analysts tie this directly into much older conspiracy lore. They connect it to the long-standing theories that the acclaimed film director Stanley Kubrick was hired by the government to fake the original Apollo moon landings.
Oh, I've heard this one. The alleged trade-off was that Kubrick faked the moon landing, and in return, NASA gave him access to incredibly advanced high-speed camera lenses.
Exactly. Those are the famous low-light lenses Kubrick later used to shoot the entirely candlelit scenes in his historical film Barry Lyndon.
Right.
The sources view Capricorn 1 and the Kubrick legends not as fiction, but as historical precedent. However, this creates a logistical problem.
Which is?
If the 4 Artemis astronauts are safely walking around a soundstage on Earth, how do you explain the physical capsule plummeting from the sky and splashing down into the Pacific Ocean?
This is where the civilian data trackers enter the narrative. According to the forums, amateur astronomers and flight trackers noticed a massive NASA cargo plane circling the exact designated drop zone near San Diego right before the official splashdown occurred.
So the implication here is that the capsule didn't fall from space. It was simply pushed out of the back of a cargo plane.
That is the claim. And the sources argued that this airplane theory perfectly answers another strange physical anomaly from the broadcast: the complete lack of steam.
Because of the heat of re-entry?
Right. Think of the physics. If a metal capsule enters the atmosphere at 40,000 miles per hour, the friction generates thousands of degrees of heat.
It's like dropping a red-hot glowing horseshoe into a bucket of ice water.
Exactly. When that blistering capsule hits the cold ocean, it should instantly generate massive, billowing clouds of steam.
But according to the analysis, the capsule hit the water and there was no steam whatsoever, which, in their view, proves it only fell a few thousand feet from the bay of an airplane, meaning the metal was perfectly cold.
And to reinforce this whole Hollywood production theory, the sources compile an entire catalog of alleged CGI mistakes from the interior cabin footage, trying to prove the astronauts were on a green screen set.
Yeah, they point to very specific visual effects mechanisms. For instance, they claim to see missing red 3D tracking markers.
Tracking markers?
Yeah. For context, tracking markers are small, high-contrast dots placed on physical walls so that computer software can anchor digital backgrounds to them. If those markers are visible when they shouldn't be, or missing when the camera moves, the illusion breaks.
Oh, wow. They also highlight a plush toy floating in the cabin that inexplicably casts zero shadow on the walls, completely defying the directional lighting of the set.
Furthermore, they analyze footage of astronaut Christina Koch, noting that her clothing appears oddly blurry and visually distorted at the edges.
Like a filter glitching.
Yes, they compare it exactly to a computer rendering or a social media filter struggling to keep up with her physical movements.
Okay, here is where the deep dive takes a massive, massive left turn. If this is a Hollywood-style production, it requires a cast. And the sources believe that one specific cast member from that 1977 movie Capricorn 1 holds the key to a bizarre underlying code.
They are talking about O.J. Simpson.
I have to admit, when I first read the source materials, I had to read this section twice. O.J. Simpson, the former football player and subject of the infamous murder trial, starting Capricorn 1 year before his legal troubles.
And this is the precise moment where the alternative analysts transition away from physics and video editing and plunge straight into Gematria.
Right. For those unfamiliar, Gematria is an ancient form of occult numerology. Think of it like a complex, secret decoder ring. Practitioners assign numerical values to letters, names, and words, and they believe that identical numerical values reveal hidden spiritual connections between seemingly unrelated concepts.
So how does the decoder ring apply to O.J. Simpson?
Well, according to the sources, the Gematria calculation for O.J. Simpson's name equals the number 33. But they argue it is not just his name. His entire public life was coded with this number.
Right. They claim his college and professional football statistics consistently revolved around the numbers 33 and 311.
They even apply this to his later legal troubles. Years after the murder trial, when he was convicted in Nevada for stealing his own sports memorabilia in a hotel room, what was the exact prison sentence handed down by the judge?
Exactly 33 years.
And the sources even tie him to the modern era, noting that when he made public statements about catching the COVID-19 virus, the subsequent news reports and data points consistently featured the numerical codes 33 and 311.
Hang on, let me play devil's advocate here for a second because this sounds like textbook confirmation bias. You can find the number 33 anywhere, if you like hard enough. That is wild trivia. But how does O.J. Simpson's personal numerology logically connect to 4 astronauts flying on the Artemis 2 mission in 2026?
This all circles back to the walkout procedure, the very first anomaly. Remember what the astronauts were wearing?
The orange suits?
those bright, iconic orange spacesuits. When you run the word orange through the Gematria system used by these analysts,
Wait, don't tell me.
the value of orange is exactly 33.
Wow. Okay, so according to these sources, this is absolutely not a coincidence. This is what they refer to as the occult games of the elite. They believe that every detail, down to the color of the fabric, is a mathematical signature.
They argue that NASA is fundamentally steeped in this kind of deep, ancient symbolism. They point out a very specific pattern in how the agency operates. NASA almost never uses biblical names for their major missions.
That's true.
Instead, they rely exclusively on Greek and Roman mythology. Project Mercury, the Gemini missions, Apollo.
And now Artemis.
The analysts believe this naming convention is a form of alchemy. It symbolizes a union of opposites. The aggressive outward thrust of the rocket represents the male energy. The celestial body receiving the mission, the moon, represents the female energy.
To them, it's not a scientific endeavor. It is a massive, highly televised symbolic ritual. They even point to historical Easter eggs to back this up.
Like what?
For instance, when President Richard Nixon famously called the Apollo 11 astronauts while they were walking on the moon, the sources claim the specific White House phone routing number he used contained the sequence 666.
So if we synthesize their arguments so far, we have faked physical footage, a script borrowed from a 1970s thriller, coded numerology, and the invocation of ancient gods.
That's a lot.
But the sources don't just see a faked spaceflight to save face. They see a deliberate, globally broadcast ritual. But what is the actual goal of this ritual?
To understand the goal, the sources say we have to look deeper into the mythology of the name itself, Artemis.
In ancient Greek mythology, the deities Artemis, Selene, and Hecate are frequently viewed as three facets of the exact same triple goddess.
Right. Selene represents the bright full moon. Artemis represents the waxing and waning phases.
But Hecate represents the dark moon.
She is the goddess associated with magic, witchcraft, crossroads, and the night. The analysts highlight that the Artemis II mission took place during a very complex period of global tension, specifically citing ongoing geopolitical conflicts in the Gulf region.
Because of that timing, they believe the mission was actually a global colony.
Which is a term for a deeply focused shamanic ritual.
Yes, a ritual entirely dedicated to Hecate. The logic is that the elite do not have the power to enact their plans alone. They need human energy.
So by broadcasting this fake, highly anticipated mission to millions of screens worldwide, they were allegedly using the public's focused attention like a magnifying glass to power this dark moon ritual.
But what exactly are they trying to conjure with that magnifying glass?
Predictive programming.
Oh.
The sources conclude that this entire billion-dollar spectacle was nothing more than an occult press release, an announcement for a new, incurable global pandemic.
Wait, let me make sure I fully grasp this leap. They view a launch of a space capsule as a disguised, magical starting gun for a biological virus. How does the concept of predictive programming actually work in this context?
Predictive programming is the conspiratorial belief that the global elite operate under a strict, almost cosmic set of rules. Before they inflict a major trauma on the world, they are required to show you their plans in plain sight.
Usually hidden in media, movies, or news broadcasts.
Exactly. By hiding it in fiction or symbolic events, they believe the elite are manufacturing your subconscious consent. You saw it coming, and you didn't stop it.
And what evidence do the sources compile to prove that Artemis II is predicting a pandemic?
They pull from a very bizarre array of data points. First, they point to unverified reports claiming the astronauts were heavily masked before launch and were seen carrying unusually large amounts of pharmaceuticals onto the spacecraft.
They also dedicate a lot of analysis to a recent cover of The Economist magazine.
Right. The cover in question features an Artemis-like rocket taking off into space. But instead of a normal launch pad, the ground surrounding the rocket is littered with scattered pills and medical syringes.
To the analysts, this is a blatant, undeniable visual link between the space program and a medical crisis.
And they combine that corporate imagery with much more fringe elements. They heavily quote a pastor from Kenya, alongside multiple anonymous forum posts from early April. All of these disparate sources were allegedly predicting the sudden arrival of a mutated virus.
The sources use a specific code word for it in their videos, right? They call it a ficus.
Yeah, ficus.
They claim this new ficus is designed to sweep the globe and that the splashdown of the Artemis mission was the signal that it had been unleashed.
To drive the point home, they draw a direct narrative comparison to a science fiction movie from 2017 called Life,
In that film, a space capsule successfully returns to Earth, but it unknowingly brings a deadly, highly adaptable alien parasite back with it.
The analysts argue that the Artemis 2 mission is playing out that exact Hollywood script in real life. The capsule returning from the void of space isn't bringing back lunar rock samples or scientific data.
Symbolically, it is bringing back the next great plague to infect the Earth.
So, what does this all mean for you, the listener? We have gone on an incredibly dizzying journey through these source materials today.
Yeah, we started by looking at a missing 2.5-second audio delay and a single parachute that supposedly defied the laws of kinetic energy.
We wove our way through Stanley Kubrick's high speed camera lenses. We analyzed O.J. Simpson's 33-year prison sentence in Nevada. And we visualized a military cargo plane dropping a tin can off the coast of San Diego.
And we finally landed on a dark moon ritual dedicated to the goddess Hecate, theoretically designed to manufacture our subconscious consent for a global health crisis.
It is an incredibly dense, layered narrative. But whether you find these theories completely absurd or whether you find certain elements of them weirdly compelling, they serve as an absolute masterclass in human psychology and how pattern recognition works.
What do you mean?
Well, when people experience a profound systemic lack of trust in their foundational institutions, whether that is a lack of trust in NASA, the mainstream media, or the government itself, they do not just stop looking for answers.
Right, they become hypervigilant.
Exactly. They start synthesizing entirely unrelated data points to fill the void of trust. A magazine cover featuring syringes, a 1970s sci-fi movie, the statistics of a football player, and a half-second video glitch in a live feed are all painstakingly woven together into one grand, cohesive narrative.
It is a desperate, highly creative attempt to make sense of a chaotic, frightening world.
Which brings us right back to the underlying mechanism of predictive programming. The sources operate on a very specific foundational belief that the elite must always broadcast their plans in plain sight. They believe the clues are always there if you are just awake enough to decode the gematria or spot the missing shadow.
It creates a reality where absolutely nothing is an accident and everything is a clue.
Everything.
And that is the thought I want to leave you with today. If our human brains are biologically hardwired to find the exact patterns and connections we are desperately looking for, how much of the reality you experience every single day is actually based on cold, objective facts? And how much of it is just the story you've chosen to tell yourself to connect the dots?